Hi, welcome to Module 2. Module 2 moves us beyond correlation and into bivariate regression. Correlation tells us the general strength and direction of relationships between two variables, but we want to know a lot more. For example, we want to know what values of y we might get for a particular value of x. Correlation can't do this, but regression can. Furthermore, we might want to know if the relationship we identify between x and y is the result of random chance processes alone, or whether there's an actual relationship underlying what we see among the data. Regression analysis can do this and more. It allows us to test specific hypotheses connecting independent variables to dependent variables. We always call the independent variable x. We always call the dependent variable y. For example, suppose we're working on a political campaign, and we want to know if voters who live in rural areas are more or less likely to vote for a Republican candidate than a Democratic candidate. We think they're probably more likely in the U.S., but we don't just want to know if they're more or less likely, which correlation could tell us. We want some numbers because we want to know how to allocate campaign resources. So let's say we create two variables. The independent variable is the distance from a major metropolitan area where the rural community lies. The dependent variable is the percentage of the countywide vote going to Republican candidates. Using regression analysis, in this case with just one predictor variable, one independent variable, we can estimate the relationship between these two factors, the nature of a town's geography, how far it is from metropolitan areas, and their votes for Republican candidates. That'll give us an estimate over time and across space for how the rural versus urban nature of one's location connects to Republican votes. We could then potentially use this information to devote more or less campaign resources to these areas, depending on whether we think we need to win these areas more or can count on support at a level that's going to generate a win in the whole state. Of course, many of you are thinking, quite rightly I'll add, that there are lots of different factors that influence people's vote choice and influence the percentage of votes in a county. It's not just limited to whether you're in a rural or urban environment. There are many other factors, things like age, education, employment levels, how the economy is doing overall, race, gender. There are lots of factors that influence individual vote choice and probably countywide vote percentages based on demographics. We're not going to assess those in this bivariate regression model because we only have two variables right now. In the future we will, because most processes, most relationships are not simply the result of one independent variable. There's almost nothing that's caused by one particular factor. There are lots and lots of factors and lots of different explanations. But to learn the process for how we identify these factors, we're going to start slowly with just one independent variable, and we'll always just have one dependent variable. You should, though, as you go through these exercises for Module 2, think about other explanations that might make sense, what other variables you would add, because we're going to get to add those in Module 3, and we're going to get to add those in your research papers, which you'll start working on later in the semester. So please do think about these factors, and I hope you enjoy learning about a more powerful statistical tool that will move us well beyond correlation and serve as a foundation for what we do the rest of the semester. Thank you, and I'll see you in Module 3.